All right, this is No Excuses with Michael DiLeonardo. I'm your host, RJ Roger. And guys, before we start the show, what I want to share is we don't need channel donations, we don't need anyone's money. If you want to support our channel, the best way you can support our channel is by subscribing to the channel, liking the video that you watch if you enjoy it, leaving a comment. Also, if you like it, share it, tell your friends about it, post it on your social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anything that you are on. If you like our channel, if you like what we're doing, please spread the word. Help us get the word out. And that's the best way you can support the channel. But you can start with hitting subscribe. Next question.
Next victim.
Great guy.
We did three. We did three. Go ahead.
We did three. I'm going to name three people that I've talked to you about personally, and I think you might have even talked about it publicly before. But you describe them as great guys, okay? People that you really have a affinity for, if that's the right word. So I'm going to ask you all three names, and I just want you to explain what makes them a great guy, or why were these people why did they have such an impact on your life? Okay. First one is Anthony Spero.
Anthony Spero, I know since I'm a little boy. And I've seen Anthony throughout his whole life, what kind of real down-to-earth, regular person he was. From T-shirts and sneakers. This guy had nothing about a suit in his attire in his mind. The attire, I got to dress up in a suit. The only time I seen Anthony in a suit was when he had to go to wake, wedding, etc. He wasn't that type of guy. He hung out. He was a pigeon flyer. He loved pigeons. That was his thing. He could stay at the pigeon coop all day long. He loved it. Anthony was so unassuming, but very powerful, very smart. He was business-minded in the sense that he wasn't a big gambler. He had a huge bookmaking operation. He was a huge Shylock. And one thing about Anthony, which was funny, later on in life when he started to get really big, he would give loans, and people would say, if you borrowed money from Anthony Spero and you couldn't pay, go across the street on the lam. You don't have to run away. Just go across the street. Because then he would yell, scream. I used to call him the caveman. That was my code name for him, the caveman. When I would talk to my friends and I had something to say, because I used to have a half sheet with gambling with him and Paulie Zac. And I would say, go see a half sheet for gambling, for bookmaking. And I would say, here, this has got to go to the caveman. Drop this off. And that meant not to him personally, to his bookmaker that he had in the club. But yeah, he was such a regular guy, so touchable, so approachable. Could talk to him about anything. I remember one time I started taking him to the racquetball club. It just had opened up on Bay Parkway. That was the name of it. I forget the name of it. But anyway, it opened up, and Anthony was a little heavy. He liked to eat. He liked to smoke cigars. He started to get healthy. Found a new girlfriend. So he just wanted to get a little healthy. So I said, come on, let's go play racquetball. So we went there. We used to play racquetball, and him and I alone used to go to the diner. I never picked up a check. He would pick up the check. Come on, I eat fish. Come on, we're going to eat fish today. We eat healthy. And we would sit there and chat. And he would teach me about the life. By not saying I'm going to teach you, we just talk. So one day we were going to the racquetball club. And the day before, Paulie Zac told me, he says, hey, by the way, Spero just made captain. Congratulate him. I really? So we go into the racquetball club. We're out. We're sitting in the steam room, right? And if they play racquetball, and it says, congratulations on your promotion. And I wasn't a wise guy at the time, but I had that ability to speak to him in those terms, you know? And he goes, Michael, he gave me a curse. I don't want to be captain. Comes with responsibility. And I was a little bit in shock. I figured he spent his whole life there. And now, but I didn't know what he was seeing inside his family at the time. He was seeing things differently than I could ever know. So he figured he was cursed by being a captain. And then when he became coachier, you know, I went in again, and it was almost like the same thing. He really didn't want it. He just wanted to hang out in the club with 50, 60 guys a day, have somebody cook, yell, scream at everybody, play cards, and just have fun. That's the kind of guy he was. And make his money. The guy would pull out money like this out of his pocket. It was like a head of lettuce. He would pull it out like this. Well, he used to have crap games in there. Everybody, the little kids, the club was a really big club, and they had couches and chairs and all. And the little kids in the neighborhood, 5, 6, 7 years old, when they would walk out of the house, 8 years old, they go in the back and fall asleep on the couches. The mothers would come looking for them. They know we was the Spero's club. So he would feed them, give the people money, the family's money. So when we talk about his life, when life became serious, that's the good side I've seen of the life with Anthony Spero, right? And that's what made me really like him. Did he have people murdered? Absolutely. That's the life. I separate what the life is if somebody commits a murder. Otherwise, I wouldn't be there. I'd be the potato farmer. I'd be working cutting meat. I wouldn't be there. So that is part of the life. People, you make a mistake. Spero wasn't a violent guy that pushed to take people's lives. But if he was put on the spot, it's going to happen. That's like any other wise guy. But he wasn't that type of guy. My brother Jimmy had bad arguments with him because my brothers were burglars. And they would bring the fence and stuff to him, all the jewelry, and they had fights at times. Bad arguments. One time, my brother had watches, pocket watches, right? I was a little kid at the time. This is the 60s. And he went to Anthony because he would fence everything. And Spero says, I'm going to give you gold weight. So what do you mean gold weight? So whatever kind of watch. He said, no, I'm only going to pay you gold weight. My brother throws the watch on the floor and starts stomping on it. Breaks the whole watch. My brother Jimmy, he was wacky. And he said, he picks up his head, now give me gold weight. They got into bed on it. But to my grandfather, yeah. But again, a week later, they're together, selling stuff to him. And that's what kind of guy he was. If you could have an argument with him, as long as you didn't cross the line, with him, touch him, abuse him, he was a good guy. I like him. Good memories with him.
Paulie Zac.
Oh. Paulie Zac, it's part of my heart, him and Jerry. Paulie was more street, more accessible. I was with Paulie all the time, and he loved to break chops. With kids, loved to break chops all the time. He had a daughter. I think he always wanted a son, so he loved the young guys. He wanted the young guys around all the time. And Paulie was a lot of fun, a very generous, huge gambler, which was his demise, destruction of a brilliant mind. Paulie Zac was the most intelligent person that I dealt with daily that I ever knew in that life, in street life. I met another person that I haven't met my whole life is extremely intelligent, more than Paul. But this guy, Paulie Zac, was the most intelligent street person I ever met. And I'm not talking about street life. I'm talking about world and education-wise. The guy went to college. He became a funeral director. He got his license. So Paul was extremely well-read. He used to send John, when John was in prison years ago in the 70s, books on Nietzsche, Machiavelli, and all these other great reads of the mind, psychology books. Paulie would send them to John Gotti in prison. But Paulie read those books. So Paulie could read right through you, and just about anybody, he could sit there and look right through you. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. The guy was great. And it goes back. His father, was friendly with my grandfather. His father was murdered. His father was brother-in-laws with D'Aguila. Well, D'Aguila was killed in 28, but he was Colangelo was part of that crew then. Colangelo gets killed. Charlie gets killed in, I think, 47 or 48. Mangano has him killed. There's so many infractions. They couldn't save him anymore. But Paulie comes up under that. Historian, that's why I know a lot of my stuff from him and Jerry, with all these stories about the family going way back. These two guys had history in their blood. Loved to talk history. Love to talk about the clutch in hand. He used to break chops. See that guy? That's the clutch in hand over there. That's the clutch hand. The guy that was cheap and a tough Shylock. Clutch hand. Look at this guy. Like jokingly. But meant it, but jokingly. He went back to those days. The one regret I have is I try to get Junior, and this is the message for Junior, I guess. I try to get Junior to sit down with Zach and Jerry and go over history when we first started. And Junior says, "Yeah, we're going to get to that." Well, yeah, stuff. Yeah, because I talked to Paul and Jerry, and they says, "Yeah, we'll sit with them, and we'll give them, we'll go lay out history, and through history you can learn your future maybe and your present, So it's a sin because I think I could have learned a lot more, and I think Junior could have learned a lot more from what these gentlemen could have told us because they seen how many bosses, and they seen a lot of turnovers in every family going way back. These are older gentlemen. They'd be close to 100 years old, if not 100 right now.
What do you mean? You said you told Junior, so you wanted Paulie and Jerry to teach other guys in the family about the history of the life, you're saying?
Yes, Junior's specifically.
Yeah.
I was going to take another, I don't know if he wants me to mention his name. He's a really good guy. I love him. But I won't because I didn't get an okay to mention his name at all. But I was going to take him also with us just to show what has happened, the treachery, the progression of people. If you learn history, you can learn a lot and just have the basics of Cosa Nostra, what it was and how it started. These are the lessons that I still wanted to learn. And I know they had a lot more to give. And I'm sorry I didn't sit down with them more and ask more questions because I really didn't ask questions. I just sat there and listened. And I could have been more probative than what I was. But at this meeting that I would have had with Junior and them would have been fantastic. It would have been a history lesson in itself.
That's interesting. I know me and you talked about something similar privately once before, but I always found that interesting when I asked you that because sometimes people will say to me as a criticism on my Black Handprint channel that, how do you think you know the life more than people in it? Or who are you to kind of say? But I research it every single day. And I think a researcher probably knows a lot more. Just because you got made and you're in the family doesn't mean I'm a Black guy. Doesn't mean if I don't research Black history, a white guy could know more than me who's studying. Now, there's things I can't know because I can't, like the ideals, the intangible part that you can't read about. That part I can't touch the spirit of Cosa Nostra, but I can read history about it. So I always found that interesting when you said, when we discussed this before, that a lot of people who don't know the history of the life that they got their finger pricked in.
Look, like you said, there's certain nuances that you don't feel certain things because you weren't in it. Yes, yeah. And hopefully I'm bringing you along to understand that. That means you have to agree with me. I'm just trying to bring you along my mindset and people like me. I'm not saying people in the life thought like me. No, we talked about those guys who pray, hope people get killed so they can move up. I'm not talking about those type of people, but the people that think like me about that life. Yeah, I'm trying to give you that feeling, and it's up to you to how you receive it. And you don't have to receive it if you don't agree with it. Then that's what life is about. But going back to you're Black. You said you're Black, right? Okay. Let's state the obvious, right? Okay. Why? Because you're Black, you can't research and understand history. Now, George Washington lived a lot of years ago. George Washington, the Revolutionary War, all events in history, astronauts. There's any part of history ever. Now we have colleges, right? We have colleges. Do we have Chinese professors? Do we have Jewish professors? Do we have Black professors? Do we have Italian professors? Could they only talk about, Italian professors could only talk about Italian culture and history? So whoever says that you're not credible enough or know enough about the life, once you've opened up a book or books and you research and you make yourself a historian and you know enough about it, that color doesn't matter, race doesn't matter. Chinese, Buddhist, Catholic, Muslim, you're studying something. I'm just stating the obvious. Maybe it's going to be a little boring right now saying this, but just to be clear, what does it mean what you are to study? Information is information in any form, in any person. So There's only the other nuance that you don't know living inside that life is what I could give and other people like me could give their own opinions or how they view the world.
Thank you. You might have just helped me a lot because boy, do I take a beating sometimes.
Well, they got to fire all the professors to talk about something. We're going to get a WASP to talk about George Washington. You know, I wanted to talk about the WASP or WIG. A wig, or we get a wig to talk about the wigs back then. We can find wig today, So it's silly. But I understand what they're saying in a bizarre way. Maybe people could say, because we're not in the college, but this is a history lesson. If you're talking about history, fact check you and anybody else. That's why we have books. Hopefully we keep books in the future and they don't scrub history, but history nonetheless could be taught by anybody. Next one, let's go. I went too long-winded on that.
No, it's good. Last one, Frank DeCicco. No. Last guy who I want to ask you for a great guy.
All right.
Last great guy.
You got me warmed up now.
No, I got after this one, I got another eight more for you. So, great guy, Frank DeCicco.
Yeah. More of a combination of Paulie Zac and John. Frankie was very, very reachable, down to earth, family guy. Frankie could play with you, and I mean play with you as kibitz with you big time. He had a lot of ball breakers in his crew. Knew the life inside and out. Had one of the biggest likable personalities in that life with other people and other families in that life. Frankie was probably one of the most respected guys that I knew by all the families. Had courtesy and carte blanche just about with anybody. Frankie had the ability to concede or lose a beef with dignity. He didn't hold grudge. Frankie didn't hold grudges like that, as far as I know. And I've had some dealings with Frank, with other people, and learned some lessons from him. Got mad at me one time because a decision was made with somebody in another family by Paulie Zac, and he got mad at me for it because he says you should have known better, and he got mad at me for a couple of months. But then he called me in and he says, I understand what you did, and it's not your fault. I get it. But that's Frankie. He says, go get him. Where's Michael been? Go get Michael. And I went to the club. And he said, I respect you as a man. You stood your ground. He said, but I know it's not your fault. But he got mad at me at that minute. Frankie had explosive temper at times. But Frankie was very forgiving. The people he liked, they were just hot. But a lot of his guys were always in trouble. They couldn't even get straightened out over the time. They had to wait for Paul to die for these guys to get straightened out. Paul would never do it because they were just street guys who were always in trouble. But that was Frankie. And Frankie started with nothing, and he gave me a ton of lessons about what was going on in the street. One of my biggest promoters to get straightened out with other people, Sammy Gravano and Paulie Zac and a list of other guys that went to the front for me. Joe Watts. All good guys. And speaking of Joe Watts, him and Frankie were extremely close, like an inseparable close at times. Frank knew the life. His father was a wise guy. He was Napolitano. He wasn't a Sicilian. And he told me I cracked that Sicilian circle just like John did. John Sr. told me the same thing. I cracked that Sicilian circle with all the becoming a skipper, And I got some stories to talk about Frank with his experiences being a captain and people trying not to put him in the right category and he put them in their place. We'll talk about that in the future. But Frankie was a great guy. It was devastating. The day he was blown up, I was there. I will talk about that story. I'm one of 4 guys that went on the other side of the street to try to help him and Frankie Hart. It was Gravano trying to pull Frankie out of the car with Joe Butter, Frankie's uncle, myself, and Eddie Garofalo. And I'll tell that story. Sammy loved Frankie. He really respected Frankie, and Frankie don't die. The whole world is different. Another story for another day. But Frankie was a great guy. I was there the day he got killed, and I was sick over it.
I heard Sammy talk about him before, and I think it's interesting the way Sammy speaks about Frank DeCicco, because he speaks very glowingly about him, also just like you. But something he said that I really liked, because that's how I am as a person also. But he said Frankie was always for the little guy. That's that's how I am in the world. I'm always for the underdog. But that a true statement as far as from what you know, always for the underdog?
That's what I was trying to say earlier. Is with all his guys were always in trouble. Frankie was an underdog. Frankie gambled. You know, he was a big gambler one time. Then he got into position. He was smart enough to stop, because you know what Paul was. Paul made him a captain. You know, Paul brought him through the ranks. Paul loved him. Paul trusted him to the ends. So ironically, but yeah, Frankie was definitely for the underdog, and everybody knew it. He give you a street decision, just like John Senior. You came with a bullshit political beef, you were losing. John and Frankie gave you a street decision. There was no politics going to be played with them when it came to beef. John told me one time, you know, he's in a club. He must have lost a lot of money. He said, I wish somebody comes. He yelled in the club. He was playing cards. I wish some comes with. Now he knows I was gambling, right? I wish somebody comes with a bookmaker beef, and they come up late to a bookmaker, because they're going to win. Like this is
That's pretty.
But John paid his debts. He never skunked the bookmaker, but he wouldn't embarrass himself like that. But that was John. So right for the underdog, those guys. Yeah, Prince. He was a great guy. Shame. Changed the history of our family by him dying.
I want you to build a crew. All right, a crew of 3 people. You're going to be the captain over these 3 people. Anybody in all 5 families. You can build any crew you want to build. Give me 1 shooter, 1 earner, and 1 person that can do both.
Joe Watts, do both.
Okay.
Louis Melito.
What's he?
He's dead, but he was shooter.
Shooter. Yeah, I know who he is. I mean,
you never would think it either if you see Louis in the street.
Shooter.
Very quiet guy. He wasn't a vicious guy. He wasn't a malicious guy. Happy-go-lucky, fun guy. He's very serious when he needed to be, as history shows. But I love Louis. Louis was a great guy.
But shooter, you picking him for?
Well, you said both combinations, Joe Watts and Erna, right? That's one.
So what I need is
as ultimate shooter. Louis was an Erna too, but just a guy that could shoot you and go out to eat and then go home the next day, come back out and say, "Let's go eat again," and not talk about it ever. Never. Yeah, Louis Melito, guy you could trust. I trust him at least.
Okay. 1 earner.
Tommy Gambino.
Okay, good answers. So
Prince.
So your crew is Joe Watts, Tommy Gambino, Louis Melito.
Yeah. Well, and the categories you gave me, you bound me to a category.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Good answers. Everybody's going to want to hear this one.
I'm going to get a drink.
Because whenever I say it, 20% of the people are really mad at me for saying it.
They get mad at you a lot. How come? I happen to like you. I think you're a nice guy.
Well, somebody famously said, if you don't piss anybody off, you're never telling the truth.
Truth hurts.
I'm going to read you a quote. Respond however you want to respond. RJ Roger said that the mob is dead.
It's a little unfair because I know where you're going with it. I know we had talks about this and your philosophy and your angle on it. Going back to the 80s, again, let's go back in time and before. there was a tremendous run with all the power and influence that they had, controlling everything. Again, the elections, the unions, the judges, all of that nice stuff, right? Uninterrupted, just about, over time. One of the best business models in history. They lasted more than more governments in the world, right? They're still here as their own government. So you take from then till now, and you take away all those things that we talked about. Power is gained. It's either taken, given, right? If it's given, it can be taken away pretty easily. But what you take away the fear factor, when you take away all the murders, that because there was that bad period in the 80s and a little bit maybe into the 90s of a lot of people dying, really crushed the mob. Really crushed it, because a lot of good people, and when I say good people, that's my perception of the life I was in. A lot of people say, how do you talk about murders and drug dealers are good people? That's my perception of the life. The business I was in, I wasn't in IBM. I was in the mob. So that's the way I perceive it. So there was a lot of good people that their lives were taken in that life that helped hurt that life. That could have been something in a good way. Example, Frankie DeCicco, a guy that lost his life April 13th, 1986. Was a major blow to our family and the change in the course of our family. So when you talk about that, I happen to agree with you. I happen to agree with you that, yes, it has been watered down and weakened. Absolutely. You know, again, I was in the union, right? I go to job, shut that job down. Every union was shut down if I asked it to. Sammy told me because I worked for Sammy at the time, he got me a job as Teamster foreman, right? Michael, the carting company's coming in. They're not paying us. Shut them down. I shut down the whole union. I had to go over to the elevator guy, shut them down. Nothing went up or went down. And not only me. That was any guy in 282, any operator in any union, carpenters. We all stuck together and shut jobs down when we needed to. They all worked behind the scenes, and we just followed orders. So that doesn't go on today. That power of the unions to control construction and everything else doesn't go on today. The power of having the state cops, you give them $10 if they stop you driving without, as little as driving in the street and you don't have a driver's license, they would stop you and take $10 from you and you go away. They know you don't have a license. They shook you down for $10. That mentality's gone. It's the FBI now. It's the United States government. You're not corrupted FBI agents like that. Yes, some have been corrupted. I know people are going to try to, correct me on this, and they're going to be right. But on the whole, you're in control, and the FBI like it control the division, the borough, safe and loft crew, the moral squad in the state where they did forever. Those guys were, for the most part, compromised. It was only gambling and stuff like that. They let that go. That's why they're so easily corrupted. They were gambling themselves, a lot of these guys. So when the drugs came in, and it just depleted the power. Now the murders. When you stop murdering people, there's less fear. Guys get cut on tape talking about people. Guys can step out of line. You got 3 shelves now, maybe 4 shelves. Who the hell knows? After a while, there's that many shelves. So, you lose your strength. When you lose the expectance of violence, if you step out of line, you lose your strength. When you lose your control of law enforcement, you lose your strength. When you lose your strength in unions, you lose your strength. It's the same thing. So it does shrink. I agree with you. But the mob is still there. They still have an influence. And there still is a fear. Every once in a while, they throw a body in the street. Years ago, that was the same. When things were quiet, they got to throw a body in the street, wake everybody the fuck up. Make sure they know we're still here. We still kill people. Yeah, guys said that. It's like, what do they think? Maybe they think we're getting soft. Certain guys spoke that. So sounds cruel. Sounds like almost inhumane, but that's the way we thought about. So it has depleted, and it doesn't have the presence and the power it once had. Look, how many cities were there? I'll let you answer. How many cities had influence or families in this country?
I think there was at its height of power. I'd say they had 20, control over or had influence in almost every major city, probably 26 major cities at some point, major cities where they had serious control over. I'm not talking like some bakery on the corner. I'm talking like over the unions, the police in that area, the local politicians, the police commissioner, captains, the cops on the beat, and all over the country. That's why I used to be so hard and go on the lam. You just go in and take the bullet because you can't run nowhere. Everywhere you go, there's a fucking family somewhere that could, hey, who do we have over there? We think he's over there. And there's a whole family over there with influence with the cops, influence with it just was so hard to run. You couldn't even run and hide. They still find you.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And that's what the Mafia cops giving information. They go in the computer system later on and find out where just about anybody is and where they are and how to get about, how to find people. So, yeah, that influence has died. And when you had that network that they set up, and as mind blowers that's what set up in the late 1800s with those families. So that's how long a run they had with that kind of network. So that network don't exist no more. Well, you're right in your thinking, in your logic. It has depleted, but they're still there. It's just not to the magnitude.
Yeah. Now, I think there's families around. There's guys that get made. There's administrations around. But the last show that we made 2 shows ago, the show is if you kill one of ours, we kill 2 of yours. I never had the ability to really come up with the words to define really what I meant. So I understand why I take heat from people that, what do you mean the fucking mob is dead? Because I never articulated it with the right words as to what do I mean? Because my theory on the mob being dead, it really isn't even about they lost their power over this or the power over that. Because in theory, the Cosa Nostra was what they were before they had political power. It was an ideal that went back hundreds of years when they were peasants and people didn't have anything yet. So it wasn't power that made it up. It was a ideology, as you called it, an ideology, an entity. Or what you said is your life is not your own. You're a part of this entity, this Cosa Nostra that goes back 400 hundreds of years. That's what I say is dead. So when I watched your last video, I had chills in my body listening to you talk.
I've heard comments, and I hope these people find peace. But don't be blaming the people that shot them or did anything else in there. Because your father, your brother, your uncle, your cousin, your gumbada, your best friend that you love, when they did it was funny. You joked about it. You rose up in the ranks from it. You didn't worry about their families.
There's something in you, no matter what. It must still be in you to talk with that kind of passion, to talk with that kind of seriousness. You could look in your eyes. You could see it. You could see Cosa Nostra in your eyes. You could hear it in your voice. You could see the intensity in your body language. So the spirit, which is what keeps everybody alive, it's the spirit. That's what I say isn't here anymore. That's what I think. Does that still live?
Okay. Well, let's start with prison. Think about all the guys that recently in the last couple of decades, since I said, let's say the 80s, right, with the cutoff period, have died in prison. Those guys had the spirit. The guys there are going to die in prison have the spirit. They give it their life. They ain't got 2 lives. There's no coming back tomorrow. There's guys in there wrapped it up at a very early age, 30s and 40s. They're going to die in jail or have died in prison. So that spirit is there for those people. So it does exist. Otherwise, they would have flipped. Now, are there guys in the street that believe that? Absolutely. There still are guys in the street. Is it en masse? No. The wiretaps tell you that in itself. Again, another show, past, gone, and there'll be more. Going out with girls and doing this and buying nice cars. Those were fruits. When this dog in Sicily is a little island. He's a little island. and their control was to eat. They could, if they control how they could eat, if they were allowed to own a farm or work a farm, sure. Did they elect, after a while, did they start electing mayors and senators and infiltrated the higher ends of up to the prime ministers in Italy? Yeah, they did it. They did. They got there. They got there. That's what's the amazing part of this. They were able to corrupt at the highest levels of Italy, Italian politics, through 100 years. You know, so but they fought an ideology of other people that invaded their island, their country, and it was all about just trying to eat and have some land to work, and it caused them, people with a lot of intestinal fortitude over the years, to say, screw this, you ain't raping our women, you ain't coming there telling us what we could eat, you ain't gonna tell us how much water we could drink, you ain't gonna take our stuff and bring it out of the country. So what the Sicilians did, all the countries they came, they took part of their cultures and made a Sicilian. Sicilians are really a melting pot of people that came to that country and invaded through time. Just that it came to a point in time when they were being taken advantage at a great level, they got fed up and they started killing them off. Hence, you know, the two Sicilies. You want to read a good book, go read, I think it's Giuseppe Lampedusa, The Panther. So I think that's the book. It talks about how the unification of Italy with Garibaldi and Crispy and the rest of them. I had a friend of mine who knew a lot about that. And I mean, we're going to get into that. But it's an amazing thing how they fought for freedom. They were freedom fighters at the time. But what it developed into, when it jumped over the ocean and came here, streets paved with gold, right? That's what they said years ago. Let's go to America, streets paved with gold. They went to New Orleans, started citrus trade, sugar trade. They worked farms, they worked everything. They were slaves. They did the same thing as a lot of the other people that came over to this country, the Irish, the Jews, and everybody else. They were abused when they got to this country. Just the Italians had this group that said, screw this, we're killing everybody that fucks with us. That's it. And we're gonna take over this. We're gonna take over that. We're gonna control you. They did it up here, not just through violence. Violence led to them there, but they made it a business model, which continues to today. Again, answer your question, not what it was, but still there.
Okay. Read you another quote. Answer how you want to answer it. Mikie Scars wasn't a gangster. He was a racketeer.
You know what? I've heard that with Sammy. Some people talking about Sammy and other people. It's false. I'm not. Take me out of the picture. Take my name out of the way. All right. Does that mean if John Gotti says he put me on a hit? Paul Castellano put me on a hit, right? Does that mean, wait a minute, hold up, let me look in the racketeer book and let me look at the gangster book. Let me look in the shooter book. Well, wait a minute, there's a page of so he's gone. Let's put that on the side, right? No, there's one book. And when you're asked to do something, it could be a guy who there's plenty of people who never killed anybody in their life, thank God. They got away with it. But if they were asked to do it, you did it. So the racketeer end is, does everybody have to be a shooter? There'd be cemetery. I mean, there are cemeteries, but everybody be in it. There'd be nobody left. You can't say everybody's got to be a murderer. That's not the way it works. Everybody be gone. So this notion of, he's never even had a fight. I know guys who never had a fight. But I know if I told them, or one of the bosses told them, bring that guy in, we're killing him, they would. Otherwise, know what would happen? They go with the guy. So this notion about racketeer, it's a nice thing when you want to say the guy's not a tough guy because he never shot somebody in the head. It's ridiculous. Guys coast through that life, like I said, and they don't have the opportunity or never told that they had to kill someone. Doesn't make him less of a tough guy. Hit him. See what happens. Another person that knows him, or another wise guy, hit him. See what happens. See if you're not jeopardizing your life by doing that. When you get your finger pinched, right? Again, we'll go back to the pinch. This is a big thing for me. You get your finger pinched. One of the first things they tell you in this, I'm going to call it their seminar, their learning, their indoctrination into this, is if we ask you to kill somebody, which finger you shoot with? Let's pinch that one. What are they asking to do? You just formed a conspiracy to murder before you even murdered anybody. You joined the club and says, we're going to pinch your finger. This is the finger you're going to kill for us. Now, tell me the people that, give me a list of people, not you. Give me a list of people that refuse to kill somebody. Give me a list. I know a guy that went to Puerto Rico, older guy. He didn't get straightened out. He's lucky he didn't get clipped. He was cousins with a skipper. I won't mention his name. Maybe he's still alive. I don't embarrass him. Older guy. But when he heard he was on a piece of work, he ran away. He never got straightened out. Never could get straightened out. He's lucky. He didn't know the person that was going to get clipped. As far as I know the story. And somebody was there who clipped the guy, told me the story, so I know it's true. Because the guy did die. So this notion of racketeer, blue collar, white collar, pink collar, doesn't matter what collar you wear. You get your finger pinched, you take an oath to murder people at the beck and call of your boss. So I don't know what yet. Like I said, I know guys that didn't have a fight on the street right now, never had a fucking fight. But if they were told to bring somebody and kill them, they had to kill them or they're going in the box. Next question, counselor.
Great answer, because this is one of those things. You're my brother. I love you to death, but it ain't even about you. It's about in general. This is the most stupid argument that I hear. You know, I heard Michael Franzese talking about this, kind of a similar thing. And he was asked in an interview about, John Gotti or somebody he was asked about, like this really feared person. And he very calmly said, and again, I'm a researcher, I'm not in that life, but everything I've ever read tells me when you put on a piece of work, you go. And it ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And Franzese says, listen, you don't really have fear of each other in that life. Something to that effect, he said. He said, well, kind of, if I'm ordered, if the order comes down, I got to go on a piece of work. It don't matter who the person is. I got to go. It's not a thing of, that's Roy DeMeo. I can't go do that. No, it doesn't work that way. So I think the researchers and the outside public and people who are not, that's that thing of when you see the difference between an insider and an outsider. I think all the insiders know. If they call in Tommy Gambino, Tommy, you're pulling the trigger. I think he's pulling the trigger. Right. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Look, there is a place. Not everybody could be a shooter. Not everybody should be a shooter. Right? Everybody has a place. Don't put a guy in a place you really don't think he fits that role. You need the animals in the life, which are expendable. And I talk about the animals, the guys that only know one thing. Survive in the street, and when they're called upon, have no conscience about killing. And we know a few. There's a few still running around. And then you have the guys the middle-level guys that fit both criteria, business guy, this guy. And then that's why there's an inner circle. The inner circle, I really don't want to talk about the inner circle right now because that's a nice one. But the inner circle of the guys are usually the shooters. And then I know buffoons and gorillas and all that. They're just guys that are extremely trusted by the boss. And these are the guys that do the bulk of the work that nobody wants to get out. Like John, when he killed Paul, there was the fist. They called him the fist. There was these group of guys, fist of five, but it would wind up being more than 5 people. But, these are the guys that do the work. Frankie DeCicco once told me, Michael, stop volunteering. Once you get in this circle, you'll never get out. They'll have you killing people all the time. Stop volunteering. This is before my brother was killed. I understood it after my brother was killed. And I understood it later on when people are on murder after murder after murder. But you mentioned John Gotti and Roy DeMeo in just about the same frame. Maybe I could clear this up too. There's a lot, and people could contradict what I say. They can have their own opinion. I'm just telling you my opinion. Ridiculous story that John Gotti was afraid to kill Roy DeMeo. I mean, I wouldn't know where in life that would come from. If he got the order to kill Roy or anybody else, well, except his own crew, John protected his own crew. But if he got the order to kill anybody else, you were going. John Gotti was not afraid of Roy DeMeo. Once you take out a gun, the guy don't know you have the gun, and he shoots you in the head, what is there to be afraid of? When you kill somebody, they don't know what's good. You can kill anybody. They kill presidents, don't they? I think 25 of our presidents in history have been shot or attempted assassinations or been murdered. Anybody can be shot at any time. So this notion that John Gotti was afraid of Roy DeMeo is just, I can't even laugh at it because it's insulting.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad you said this because some of the shit I hear drives me nuts. Oh, he was afraid of him. I don't think anyone. Also, look, I grew up around some like fucking guys who just like they don't. A punch in the face doesn't scare us. They don't even care about losing a fight. It doesn't matter. Like these people, some of these guys that, from the way I research it, they don't give a shit about. Their mind does not have that click, that switch of like fear. I don't think you can get to where John Gotti rose in the family if you have that inside of you, that gene of fear and being scared. You have to know, like you said, you have to know you're going to die in the street, die in jail, or you're going to. I guess you accept that reality at a certain point, and if you don't, you probably don't get to where John Gotti made it to in the family. Is my guess. You can confirm or deny.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. You have to know the consequences going in. But talk about fear. Human beings as a whole, put the mob on the side, right? This is my opinion again. Human beings on a whole. If there's a lot of shark attacks, people get in their boats and go out and start killing sharks. If there's a lion or a leopard that's bothering tribes in Africa through the year, they go out and they kill every lion and leopard there is. Human beings kill what they're afraid of. They try to genocide it, wipe it out if they're afraid of something. That's a natural instinct. It's overboard sometimes, and without even making a pun, it's overkill. But human beings as a whole, people included, somebody they deem a threat to them, they kill. They have a chance to kill it, but animal or human. So that's the way we're built. That's self-preservation in us. So to be afraid of something means you may eliminate somebody that's 100 times tougher than you, 100 times more violent than you. That's why you have to have that little self-preservation in you, that this guy's going to take my life or hurt me, and you may die. So that thing about fear, be careful what the fear you instill in somebody because it may come back on you one day.
Good answer. Next question. Build me the perfect administration. One boss, one underboss, one consigliere. Anybody in all 5 families.
How far back?
History of the country.
Carl Gambino.
Boss. Okay.
Joe Traina. He was
Okay.
there going back into one of the most volatile times in history and was able to navigate all of that stuff going back. And we'll talk about him. One of the most influential political people that survived all those wars. Died probably 95, 98, maybe 100 years old. His son was Mario Traina, was a skipper forever also when he stepped down. Joe Traina as a consigliere. Underboss, I'm going to say, tough one. See, I can't talk about guys in other states. It's a little difficult. And I don't want to insult anybody that's aficionados of people in other states because I really don't know their personalities. So I'll keep it pretty much local.
Yeah. In New York.
Yeah. If I was to pick an underboss, I would say Neil because he kept the balance.
Okay.
Say Neil, as far as I know, like I said, I know a lot about training. I know what he's done in history. So even though I wasn't lived in that time period, I know what he's done at that time to keep peace. And I would say Neil, because I think he would have been a good balance for Colin.
Okay. Next question. You still go to the batting cage every now and then, right?
Oh, it's been a while, but yeah, I go.
You pretty good?
I need about 15 swings, yeah. If I still have it.
I saw the picture. You look pretty good swing. You're pretty good with a baseball bat, right?
Oh, yeah, I can swing. Yeah, I've been playing ball since I'm a kid. I always had a pretty even. I wasn't a home run hitter. I was a pain in the ass singles and gap hitter.
All right. Well, you're pretty good with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear John Alite's good with a baseball bat.